And as we continue our live coverage of the 2024 election, WTOL 11 has brought in a local expert on politics and the election cycle. So we are joined now by University of Toledo political science professor Sam Nelson to discuss a variety of things tonight. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here again tonight. We appreciate it. You know, let's start right away with voter turnout. I just got the latest look here from Lucas County, looking at about just under 65%, 64.5%, which a little bit lower than we saw in 2020 and 2016.
Yeah, and I'm kind of curious about what explains that. Maybe that the presidential election is not competitive. Maybe that's left a few people at home, but it doesn't seem like great news for Marcy Kaptur.
Okay, so some of those tight, big races in Congress that we're looking at.
Right. Yeah, that race could be really close. It could come down to the wire. It's a 53% Republican district. I think she needs strong turnout in Lucas County, where there are more Democrats than there are in some of the rest of the district.
A moment ago, we were running a story talking about how every state is different. It's 2024. We have new technology. I know states' rights are very protected. That's part of our fundamental foundation of this country. But couldn't we get some uniform plan where every state is the same in how they do it? Because, like, some states can't look at the ballots until a certain time. Some can. Some are. Everybody has a different way of doing it, and it just messes up the timeline.
Yeah, it's kind of frustrating watching, and it makes it confusing for people, especially if you've moved from multiple states.
Sure.
There are some real limits. The Constitution gives states the power to run their elections.
Yeah.
At the same time, Congress can give carrots to states to do certain things. So after the 2000 debacle, there was a lot of federal money. The Help America Vote Act, I believe, is what was passed after that encouraged states to reform the way they were doing things. And then we got another round of that after 2020 and 2016, which is why we're having paper ballots and things like that in a lot of states.
Those butterfly ballots back in 2000.
Nightmare.
Yeah. So we've got some big races that obviously the presidential race, I think, is really turning a lot of people out and turning their attention on. But as you said, here in Ohio, we think we know how that's going to go. But as those results start to come in this evening, what have you noticed so far?
So one pattern that seems to be developing is that rural counties in places like Florida and Georgia are moving more towards Trump. That doesn't add up to a lot of votes. What we need to see when some of the larger suburban counties come in is whether they're moving towards Harris.
Doctor, in years past, Ohio has been a real key state to getting the president elected. We had Trump here every time. Hillary was here in 2016. We had Biden was here in 2020. This year, we're no longer there. We've been classified as a red state, and they're going somewhere else. What has happened to make that happen?
Well, the state really has moved to the right. It's become more Republican. I think the redistricting that happened after the 2010 census helped move the state to the right, and then even further after the 2020 census. I think the state is older than it was compared to the rest of the country as the population has declined in Ohio. We have fewer electoral votes, but now we have older voters. They're whiter, less college education. That's all groups that have been moving towards the Republicans.
And you mentioned Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur. She needed Lucas County to turn out for her today. But she's been serving since what, 1984, 1985. So for quite some time, do you think that the Trump effect could help someone like Derek Marin in this situation, in this race?
It's certainly favorable circumstances to be running as a first-time candidate to try to get a seat. You've got kind of a tailwind behind you when the top of the ticket is cruising to a pretty easy victory. And so I think that is a real benefit for him. It would have been much tougher for him 2 years ago when she beat J.R. Majewski quite easily in a midterm election.
Let's talk issue 1 in Ohio. Very confusing for a lot of voters. As I was voting, I was looking and trying to understand the language. It was so hard to understand.
There's a lot of it.
I get the concept of it. We want to calm down the gerrymandering, make it fair. I think a plan was in place for 2 different districts. It was shot down by the state Supreme Court. So let's go this way. But yet, the efforts to make it a fair way of going, the Republicans were trying to shoot that down and saying, no, don't vote for it, where the Democrats were all in favor.
Right. I mean, Republicans are benefiting from the current system that we have.
They want to change.
Right. Why would they want to change? It's really benefiting them. It's giving them a supermajority or close to supermajority in the state legislature. It's difficult to pass state constitutional amendments. I think we got maybe a little bit complacent when we saw the abortion rights amendment and the marijuana legalization amendment go pretty easily. That's not actually how it usually goes for these kinds of ballot issues and amendments.
You were to talk about issue 1. There was also something interesting on the ballot for Toledo residents when it comes to the city charter in extending the term limit for the mayor. Any idea on how that might go from right now it's 2 terms to now 3, could be 3.
Well, so that's not going to get caught up in Democrats versus Republicans, most likely, right? It's kind of Democrat on Democrat, I think. And I mean, it'll be really interesting to see. I don't know how important it is to voters. Maybe it's a little bit inside baseball. It's maybe important to party elites and people who are really thinking about, a 3rd term for the mayor or something else. I don't really know, and I don't think we probably have a very clear picture into how people feel about that. It's not like the kind of thing that gets polled a bunch.
Historically, what's been the impact of when you get someone in the White House and they have the Senate and the House in their corner? They're all of the same party. They can get a lot of things done theoretically, but sometimes if you have one of the House or Senate is not with the White House, then sometimes it creates a little, not as much getting done, but still more people seem to be affected by it and really engaged in the government.
Well, when we've got what political scientists call divided government, different party in the White House and in Congress, we get gridlock, especially the way things have been in recent years. On the other hand, if you have a new president, it's very rare for a new president to come in without a Congress of their party. So if we see a result this time where Trump is in and Democrats control a branch of Congress, that would be unusual. It'd be unusual if Harris gets in and Republicans are controlling Congress.
Am I right that in 2016, when Trump was first elected, he had both the House and Senate?
He did.
Yeah.
He did.
And still, his efforts to get the wall built were all blocked by Democrats.
There was very little in the way of legislative accomplishments, despite having those favorable conditions.
That's something.
Yeah, they tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Famously, John McCain came in and cast the deciding vote, thumbs down. And the big tax cut was really the only thing they got out of that Congress. Whereas if you compare to when Barack Obama came in 2009, with majorities in the Senate and the House, they passed Obamacare. They passed big, major legislation, which is what you would normally be shooting for.
Well, there will be some races that we're looking at. I think there's maybe one in Michigan, too, if I'm not mistaken, but different races that could change that balance of power in Congress that we're going to be keeping a very close eye on tonight.
Right. Certainly in the House and the Senate, our Senate race is key, but Democrats might pick up a surprise in Nebraska. That people are kind of looking at that. That might counterbalance losing John Tester and Joe Manchin. I think the House may take a long time to decide. There are maybe only 24 seats, but a bunch of them are in California. And California, kind of going back to your earlier point, very slow at counting votes.
Let's go back to when President Biden was kind of shoved aside and Kamala was appointed the candidate. There was no discussion. It wasn't even an open convention. They just kind of pushed her through. And there really hasn't been that much backlash among Republicans. Is that the first time that's ever happened where basically they just made an incumbent president go away and appoint somebody else?
Well, I think it's the first time you pushed out an incumbent that late in the campaign. You certainly had LBJ decided not to run for re-election.
That was his choice.
Yeah, but it was his choice. And so in that way, it's different. In one way, it's not different, which is this is the old school way of parties deciding who their candidates are rather than primaries. The modern primary system only goes back to after the 1968 elections and the fracas in Chicago at the '68 convention. So it's not unusual for parties to make those choices. It's just unusual in the last half century.
Yeah, and as we mentioned in that story from Jeff, this election cycle has been unusual. Really, just one thing. It seemed like one thing after another. So, do we think we might know who the president is tonight, or do you think it's going to take a few days here?
I think it's certainly possible if either candidate is outperforming their poll numbers. If the polling error is about 3%, which is very normal kind of polling error to see, then I think either candidate might have a decision by midnight tonight, 1 o'clock tomorrow morning. I think it's more likely it'll be sometime early tomorrow afternoon when Pennsylvania completes its count. But it is certainly within the realm of possibility to have a result in a few hours.
But we might even know by middle of the night. Who knows?
Yeah.
Every year is so different.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we've seen a whole range. It was Saturday, in 2020. Yeah. But, 2016, it was really just about 11:45, I think the AP called the race.
Dr. Sam Nelson, University of Toledo, thank you so much for being with us.
Being here.
Love talking to you. I can talk all night. Stick around, will you, please?
Okay. I think we will be checking in with you here in just a little bit. We appreciate it. And as you can see, those results are scrolling in. We've got them for you. And we'll take a quick break here, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. Stay with us. Thanks for being with us tonight. We appreciate it.